short background. I have studied Advaita Vedanta with the late Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Then I was led to Tibetan Buddhism with several teachers from the Nyingma and Kagyu school. I have self-studied some Tantric Shaivism. I'm also very interested in shamanic indigenous traditions. I am more of a scholar with very little sadhana practice. Question: if someone experiences a tremendous difficult Kundalini process, that is, when the movement of prana is unpredictable and the chakra centers with their according samskaras of vasanas are not being pierced in an orderly and sequential manner, which is upward moving, but when it is more chaotic, sometimes moving up, sometimes down, does this mean that it is rather a falling Kundalini process? If not, is there over time a natural self-correcting process taking place as the inner obstacles are increasingly resolved, and therefore the energy is becoming more aligned and able to flow more freely? Okay, this is a very interesting question. Interesting because it's also it contains some of these aspects which speaks to the intricate nature of the process. So therefore we cannot just brush this all with the same kind of brush stroke of how that process unfolds. And just to say that further in our course we will be speaking in much greater detail on the nature of Kundalini ascent as it goes through several pathways, because out of rich network of subtle pathways of energy, there are only 6 that Kundalini can travel, and we are going to be giving a lot of attention to that in our following up modules. So we will be speaking about it in greater detail, but here what I want to take an opportunity in responding to this question is with regard to whether Kundalini can self-clear a proper path if it has entered improper pathway of ascent, and also with regard to whether does that mean that all this up and down indicate that it's a falling Kundalini process. So I want to clarify this first. So about falling Kundalini, yes, there are distinctively clear elaboration on what is known in tradition as a falling Kundalini. But before we speak about that, I want to also clarify that there are 2 kinds of falling Kundalini. Okay? One which is part and parcel of the process, of which we will speak in the forthcoming modules, which is not so much falling, but it's descending Kundalini. And that which is ascending Kundalini. So ascending Kundalini is always preceded by that going down, descending Kundalini. This is a proper process anyway. There are Sanskrit terms for that, which I will omit for now. But we will return to them in our following up modules. This descending quality of Kundalini, of course, if it's following again a proper pathway, even when as it was or as it goes down, then that will be, as it touches the root chakra and pierces the appropriate knot associated with the root chakra, the Muladhara, then it will begin its swift rise, providing there is not much obstacles and obstructions in the system, right? It's clear. What we term as falling Kundalini, there are two types, and I will just briefly mention them here. One is that when Kundalini actually falling down below Muladhara, in other words, it goes into the regions which are no longer associated with psychic centers of a healthy, harmoniously developed individual, human being. It goes into that region in Sanskrit called Patala, or the region of so-called hell. Whether this is to be understood in religious term, what the term hell stands for, doesn't have to be. It's simply the areas below human existence, we could say. And there are chakras that unfold from Muladhara downwards. It is possibly very rare, but occurrences do happen, and it's one of the falling Kundalinis. And it has, again, special terminology for that. And there is another type of falling Kundalini, and that is more when Kundalini, upon its awakening, goes to a certain area associated with the top of the palate in the mouth. It's called talu in Sanskrit. And instead of going down as it would in a normally descending Kundalini to Muladhara to begin the process of ascent through activation and piercing of all the respective notes, instead it will rush down to Muladhara, touch Muladhara without activating or piercing the note associated with Muladhara. It will rush up again into all the way to the level of the ajna, or the eyebrow center in the subtle anatomy, and go again back to the talu, to that area associated with the palate, and begin to descend gradually from psychic center to psychic center, from talu to throat chakra, from throat chakra to heart chakra, from heart chakra to solar plexus, and so forth, all the way down. So this is called and termed as falling Kundalini process. It exhausts the endocrine system, it exhausts the individual, and even if one seemingly experiences all the intensity of the process, which, by the way, with Kundalini shooting up to ajna, without again piercing it either, it still does some, and accompanied by some spiritual experiences, spiritual phenomena. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring the associated states of fullness, felicity, bliss, beatitude. And one comes out of meditations or even samadhis exhausted, disappointed, depressed, and so forth. So therefore, it's of course spoken of as highly undesirable movement of Kundalini. Now, just quickly about whether Kundalini can resolve, right? Whether this over time can self-correct itself once the inner obstacles are increasingly resolved, and therefore the energies become more aligned and able to flow more freely. I don't want to say no, because everything is possible in consciousness. However, what we do know from clinical and classical observations is that once Kundalini has chosen a certain path, a certain subtle pathway where it travels, it repeatedly enters that. And we will speak about it again in greater depth, naming, enumerating, and describing almost in minute detail the nature of that particular ascent. So, for example, just to bring it here, if Kundalini enters one of the side channels which run in parallel to the solar and the lunar ones on the right and the left side of the spine, right, on the sides of the Sushumna, then if, let's say, if it chooses the pathway known as Lakshmi, then it will give one all these spiritual experiences of the ascent, because it will go from Muladhara to heart chakra, and then will go further from heart chakra to the higher centers in the head without piercing the point in Brumadhya or Ajna chakra, as it is known in yoga. What it does, it bypasses other energetic centers, so it doesn't do any work there. And then it is stuck in that kind of side journey. It does it and will do that until something either miraculous, extraordinary, or some kind of form of rehabilitation or repair begins. And this is what makes Kundalini so, I would say, intricate in the sense of the unfoldment of the process, so that expecting that Kundalini will begin moving in the right pathway and adjust itself simply because it will resolve these issues is inconsistent with the understanding that if it's already entered the wrong pathway, then these very issues are not being resolved, you see. In order for these issues to be resolved, certain, at times, more radical adjustments would need to be made. If these adjustments are made and requirements met, then we could say that yes, of course, it is not only possible, it is very much part of the process. But if the person just lives and experiences this and somehow hopes that at some point all this will be adjusted by the power of Kundalini, which in the New Age has been granted with that in the Supreme Intelligence itself. But that's what some of the discourses in our forthcoming modules are dedicated entirely, is to the connection between prana and breath. How when breath is rendered to incoming and outgoing, it loses consciousness. So Kundalini, as it were, is not conscious always. So this is quite frankly, a nonsense invented by half-educated, perhaps, people who work out there, because a great understanding here rests on the fact that Kundalini needs to return its consciousness to itself. And that's the whole point and the whole purpose of a proper unfoldment. So I trust this will suffice to quench your curiosity, and I would encourage you to take up some sadhana so as to benefit from all that you've been studying through direct experiences.